The WarioWare games are an oddity among the games industry. You heard of mini-games? Well, the WarioWare series are micro-games. You play a series of games that last a few seconds apiece, marathon style, and they're pretty fun games, especially WarioWare Touched on the Nintendo DS and WarioWare Smooth Moves on the Wii, which use the gimmicks of their consoles to great effect. And now there's a new game in the series, Game & Wario on the Wii U. I didn't purchase Game & Wario when it came out because I like the WarioWare games, but they just never seem to last you very long. You play the game hardcore for a week or two, and once you've seen everything, you pretty much never go back to it, and if I'm paying $50 for a new Wii U game, I want my money's worth, and it turns out that I didn't need to purchase Game & Wario, because I found it at the local library. I swear that I need to start a playlist called Terrors of the Library for all the crap games that I find there, have them set aside like a separate series. Well, first of all, even though the game was marketed as a new addition to the WarioWare games, it's a completely different format. Rather than being a series of micro-games like the other games in the series, Game & Wario is a collection of 12 mini-games. The only real way to review it is to go through every mini-game one at a time, but before we get to the main event, let's discuss a few other things about the game in general. The game has 4 mini-games that are multiplayer only, and I didn't have a friend or a hostage to play with, so I won't be commenting on those. As you beat the games and get high scores, the game gives you tokens, which you trade in for orbs and this chicken-shitting machine. A lot of the orbs are character bios or hints on the games, but some of them are fun little knickknacks and mini-games, just random things that you can screw around with. A lot of them are stupid, like this one where you write down where you want to go on the gamepad, you hold the gamepad to the screen, and a truck driver sees it and takes you where you want to go, but it's always the same place, just with the name you drew written on some signs. But some of the orbs are really fun to play with. My favorites are the Shadow Puppets orb, which takes the video off the gamepad's camera and does some trippin' balls effects to it, and the Forgetful Queen, where you're talking to the gamepad's microphone and the queen repeats what you say to her subjects.
I hate Metroid Other M.
Often I have more fun playing around with these orbs than I do playing the actual game. What I find particularly humorous is that the game gives you tokens for beating games and reaching high score marks on games, but it also gives you a token every day that you boot the game up. It's like the game is saying, really? You came back? Well, okay, here's something for your troubles, I guess. Alright, now let's get to the actual game. I apologize for the way I had to film this review, but this game does heavily use the gamepad, and I don't know how else to record off the damn thing, so sorry about that. Game 1, Arrow. You hold the gamepad sideways, swipe your finger back on it, and release your finger to fire an arrow. The objective is to keep all the tiny Warios from stealing your strawberries, plus every now and then you have to raise the gamepad upright to deflect a cannonball, which is a pointless addition to the game. The most annoying thing about this game is the aiming. There's no targeting reticule on the screen unless you're drawing an arrow, so you have to take a second or two to aim every single shot. Plus your arrows travel in gigantic arcs, and the arc changes depending on how far back you draw the arrow, which is admittedly a nice realistic touch, but it adds to the pain in the ass of aiming every shot. It gets tedious really fast. To get a decent score in the game, you're supposed to get combos, shoot enemies so that their bodies fly back into other enemies. You do this by landing a direct hit on an enemy rather than letting your arrow arc and hit them from overhead. The problem is that the arrows arc so badly that even if you draw the bow back as far as possible, you won't land the direct hits that the game wants you to go for unless the enemies are like 2 feet in front of you. You can also use pepper shakers to make your arrows sneeze and take out enemies in an area, but the sneeze arrows also only work if you land a direct hit and not an overhead hit, and the sneeze arrows have almost no range to them, so they only work at point-blank range! Just feels like the game doesn't understand how its own mechanics work, because it's specifically designed for you to go to headlong direct shots at enemies, but the arrows don't have near enough range to actually do that! At the end of each stage you have to fight a boss, and if the boss catches you, he one-shot kills you. It's like they screwed up everything that was possible to screw up with this thing. You know, the Wii U came packaged with a game called Nintendo Land, which is also a collection of 12 mini-games, and one of the Nintendo Land games is a ninja game, where you hold the gamepad sideways and swipe the screen to throw shuriken. Except that game gives you a reticule, and, this may blow your mind, the projectiles fly straight! Plus the ninja game has the most epic music ever. So Game & Wario took a good Nintendo Land game and made it shit. Game 2, Shudder. So Mona has a different job in every WarioWare game, and apparently now she's a photojournalist. The TV shows a big screen full of buildings and people, and you have to take pictures of 5 people that are marked at the bottom of the screen before time runs out. You do this by holding up the gamepad, aiming it like a camera, zooming in and snapping pictures. Because the camera zooms so far in, the only way you'll find any of your targets is by looking at the TV, but once you've found your target, you look back at the gamepad, and the camera is zoomed in so far you can't tell where the hell you're pointing or where your target is. The camera, even zoomed out as far as possible, zooms in so far that you can almost never tell where in the hell you're aiming on the screen, so getting your bearings is a constant struggle. Plus you have to zoom in really far to snap pictures of your targets, or else the game doesn't give you a good score, and every slight twitch of your hand throws your aim completely off and screws up your photo. You only get 16 photographs per level, by the way. No takebacks, no do-overs. Each level is custom built to piss you off. Level 3, you have to photograph invisible ghosts using vague clues in the environment. Level 4, everybody is wearing hats and snouts, so you have to tell who's who just by their eyes and head shape. And level 5, you're on a moving train! It's already hard to make your mark, and now everything's moving, so you've only got a few seconds to spot, recognize, and photograph your target. Christ, I have a newfound respect for Jimmy Olsen, and just to give you a hint of how little they cared about this game, Level 3 reuses the same scenery of Level 1, and Level 4 is a copy of Level 2. I tell you, the only way this game is going to turn good is if Monopole's and April O'Neil gets captured by the bad guys she's investigating in the game's opening, and then you play a completely different game where the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles save her. That game I'd play, but this one? Game 3, Ski. You hold the gamepad vertically and turn it to steer left and right down a slope. The goal is to get to the bottom without dying. The TV shows a third-person view while the gamepad shows an overhead view, and you won't ever look at the TV because the camera keeps changing so you can't tell what you're doing. This is a clone of another Nintendo Land game, the F-Zero Racer. The exact same controls and exact same gimmick with an overhead view on the gamepad and a third-person view on the TV. Except in that game, the television's third-person camera always stays behind you so that you can look at either the gamepad or the TV to play. So again, they took a good Nintendo Land game and they screwed it up. Ski may be a pale imitation of Nintendo Land, but it's still a decent driving game with decent controls as long as you only use the gamepad. I guess I'll let it pass. Game 4, Patchwork. Tell me about it. This whole damn game needs some patchwork. You have about a half dozen puzzle pieces and a board with a ton of lines on it. You have to drag each piece onto the board so that the entire outline of the piece lines up with lines on the board. It doesn't matter how many lines go through the body of the piece. There's absolutely no way to fail these puzzles. You get hints, and you can pretty much just drag a puzzle piece everywhere on the board until it goes in, and all it'll cost you is time, which the game doesn't even use for score. You could leave the game running on a puzzle for 24 hours, game won't care. Planet Earth will for wasting that much electricity, you monster, but the game don't give a shit. Once you get to the normal difficulty, there are multiple places each piece can go, but there's a button to check if any pieces are wrong, and again, these puzzles are pass-fail. It doesn't matter how long you take. It doesn't add difficulty, it just annoys you because the puzzle layout is confusing already. Of all the good puzzle games I've played, this is not one of them. Game 5, Kung Fu. You play as the martial artist Young Cricket as he jumps over to his master over a set of pillars and platforms, and you have to grab dumplings along the way or else you get too tired to make it any further because that's how metabolism works. Cricket jumps on his own, and you tilt the gamepad to move in mid-jump, which defies all known laws of physics, and you can press the shoulder buttons to throw yourself straight at the ground. The TV shows a third-person view, which is useless because the camera is at such a low angle you can't gauge your jump and tell where you're going to land. The gamepad shows an overhead view where you have no idea how close you are to the ground. It's like neither view lets you see what you're doing. But once you play the game a few times and you get a feel for the physics, it is, admittedly, fairly enjoyable. My only problem was that the game forces you to hold the gamepad flat level with the ground and use that as the neutral position that keeps you still, so you have to hunch over the damn gamepad to play it or else you get a glare on the screen. Plus, you really need to sit somewhere that you can support your arms because the gamepad is just a little too heavy. But ergonomics and length aside, this game's okay. Game 6, Gamer. You play as 9-Volt, who is playing his Game Boy Advance in bed when he's supposed to be sleeping. The gamepad is basically a Game Boy Advance where you play micro games from earlier WarioWare games, which only use the control pad and the A button, but as you're playing the games, your mom keeps walking into your room on the TV to check up on you, and you lose if she catches you playing the game. You have to play the game long enough to beat the boss and only pause and pretend to sleep whenever your mom comes in, because if you pretend to sleep for too long, you fall asleep for real. It's actually a really cool concept. It's like some glorious hybrid of WarioWare and a G-rated Five Nights at Freddy's, like you're playing a game wrapped inside a horror game. It gets really tense when you know your mom is coming. You have to watch the top screen so you don't sleep too early and waste energy, but you can't take your eyes off the gamepad or else you'll lose the Game Boy game, which only pauses if you're pretending to sleep, and the games are very fast-paced. It's a constant juggling act, and it's a lot of fun. Hell, it's a way more effective horror game than Cursed Mountain. The only problem is that the game is pretty much a one-trick pony. The game has 4 difficulty levels, and after you've played each level once, it's pretty easy to figure out and counter Slender Mom's patterns. She only gets unpredictable on level 4, which is an endurance round anyway. There's also the option to play as 18-volt and just play the games without Slender Mom hunting you, which surprisingly isn't nearly as fun, but the game as a whole is refreshingly pretty good. Game 7, Design. This game you're helping Dr. Krieger build a new robot, at least according to the intro video. Well, I am a mechanical engineer, so this should be awesome! And easy. That's it. That's the entire game. Jesus H! Is this what years of Call of Duty have done to the games industry? Really? Have games evolved so far? Do we no longer know what a good game is to where drawing a straight line on a touchpad? That's the new threshold for entertainment. That's the new innovation in gaming! This blows my mind on so many levels. 12 games, and they decided this had to be one of them? This was the best they could come up with? This isn't a game, this is geometry homework! And even as shitty as this game is, it doesn't always read your inputs correctly. If you lift your stylus off the touchscreen, it's a crapshoot whether the game reads anything you draw afterward. And look at this. The game wants me to draw a triangle with 2.5-inch sides, but there's barely enough room on the screen to fit it. And you want to know what the sickest part is? This is the only one of the main games that has a 2-player mode. What, you and your friend draw a straight line and you see whose line is straighter? Because I'm pretty sure that kids in the olden days who were stuck with sticks and rocks came up with better games than that! Never thought I'd play a game where I need a frickin' protractor to play it. How did this even... I just added to the counter. Now, let's be fair. Game 8, Ashley. This is a side-scroller where you tilt the gamepad to steer Ashley and her flying broom through a stage, collecting as many magic orbs as you can along the way. It's basic, but it's alright. You can't shoot. Instead, Ashley just automatically shoots cookies as they fly towards you. The game doesn't have a health bar, but after you take 5 or so hits, you start bleeding orbs, then the game stops and it says calm Ashley down. But it doesn't give you a hint on how you do that. You're supposed to rub the touchscreen to pet her, which I only figured out just by trying everything. Who's a good Ashley? Who's a good girl? You are, yes, you are! And if you do well at the end of the stage, she makes a bunch of cutesy faces at you like she's got a crush on you, which, if you're familiar with Ashley from the other games, should scare the piss out of you. The game is decent, but it only has 3 stages. It takes not even 15 minutes to play this game to completion, and then, until you start grinding to 100% the whole game, you'll never touch it again. Though once you finish all 3 stages, the game adds stars to the levels. Whoop-de-frickin-do. I shouldn't give this game a pass because it's short, you can't turn very sharply, and there are an infinite number of Flash games online that are better and free to play, but after the last game, I'll take what I can get. Game 9, Taxi. You play as a taxi that drives around, and you stop and pull out a bazooka to blow up UFOs! And then you catch the people or animals that they were trying to abduct, and you ferry them to their destination. Yeah, the first level you're picking up pigs, cows, and chickens. If the next game is cleaning out all the feces in the back of that taxi, I swear to God, I quit. The top screen shows a map, and the bottom screen shows your perspective in the taxi. This game is actually really fun. The controls are smooth, the graphics bright and visually appealing, you don't have to divert your attention between both screens in a maddening fashion since you mostly just use the gamepad, and the driving shooting gameplay is really well designed. Only problem, the levels are short, and again, there's only 3 of them, so you'll beat the game in about 15 minutes. Pretty fun, just not near long enough. Game 10, Pirates. You have a magic shield and you have to divert arrows from 4 pirate ships that are shooting at you. 1 ship directly ahead of you, 1 on your left, 1 on your right, and 1 somehow overhead. Captain Wario shouts orders, and you have to aim the shield at each of the ships in the order he calls to deflect the arrows. You have to lower the shield to the ground between each volley of arrows, and if you forget to do this, you don't hear the next set of orders. Captain Wario yells his directions in a rhythm that the ships then use to fire, and there's loud music and flashy lights on the screen, and finally you realize this is a heavily disguised dancing game. So well disguised that I can't figure out how I'm supposed to play it. The game's scoring just feels completely arbitrary. You have to get every single one of your movements set to a rhythm to get a good score, and the music is so damn bland and nondescript that it's hard to figure out what the rhythm is, let alone how you're supposed to sync up your movements to it. You can block every single arrow and not take a single hit, and the game will still just give you a meh rating because there's other stuff it rates you on, and I can't just figure out what it wants. C for enthusiasm? What the hell does that even mean? I am plenty enthusiastic!
Come on. Keep down.
Come on, you call that a song? Play some real pirate music!
Lion, loot, and steal it is the reason we are pirates. Ransack and pillage and don't knock it till you try it. Plundering and pilfering, make up a healthy diet. Arr, look at me! I'm doing the booty boogie.
There's not much to the gameplay but just waving the gamepad around hoping you aim at the ship correctly, and keeping with the rhythm means that you basically have one shot to turn and aim at a ship that you can't see correctly, or else you take a hit. It's just not fun, and I'm not even sure the game knows how to score you. It makes you wonder why they didn't just put in a dancing game! Game 11, Bowling. You swipe on the touchscreen and then you tilt the gamepad to throw and steer a bowling ball. The problem is that the ball has so much momentum that it's hard to steer. Once the ball starts moving in one direction, you've got almost no chance of redirecting it in time. Plus the game is built around trick shots with a few pins rather than normal bowling setup, and you can't see the pins on the gamepad until after the game takes away control of the ball, so you've only got a vague idea at best of where to steer the damn thing! 3 iterations of Wii Sports, and Nintendo has still found a way to screw up bowling! Man, it's all down to the wire. This last game will either tie things up or push the game over the edge into being shit. Game 12, Bird. Every WarioWare game has a minigame called Pioro, and it's always some variation of an arcade shooter where you play as a red bird with a super long tongue. This rendition of Pioro is a Game & Watch game where you have to eat nuts as they fall from the sky. The gamepad shows the game with Game & Watch LED graphics, while the TV shows the game in colored graphics. You can aim your tongue either diagonal direction and hold A to extend your tongue as far as the screen will allow. You have to eat every nut as it falls. If a nut reaches the floor, that section of the floor breaks and you can't touch it. If a nut hits you, you die. The controls suck ass. If you're facing one direction and you want to move in the other direction, you have to tap the control pad twice. Once to adjust your aim, and then however many times to actually move. The tongue takes time to extend, so it's really easy to miss a nut, and the nuts fall so fast that you don't get many chances to catch one before it hits the ground. The tongue also takes time to retract, and that's time that you're super glued to the ground and can't move, which gives the nuts even more time to get closer to you. The controls are just so sluggish that I can't get into it. Bird? How about bird shit? And that brings the final score up to... I went to Wikipedia to look this game up, and it turns out that Game & Wario started out life as a series of tech demos that were used to demonstrate the Wii U's capabilities before the system was released. Once the Wii U came out, the devs basically just decided to scrounge all the demos together into a game, and they gave everything a WarioWare paint job to disguise it as a market title. But the game just feels like they didn't put much effort into it. Even setting aside the design game, which is playing fast and loose with the definition of the word game, all of the games only have a few levels apiece. It feels like they polished everything up just enough to where it could pass as an actual game, and then they just pushed it out into stores to make a quick buck on an established franchise. And in the process, they played bait and switch with everyone who was expecting a new WarioWare game. There was some effort put into the game. It looks nice and has plenty of Easter eggs and unlockables, but the effort didn't go where it matters, into the games. Oh, you want to know how little effort they put into this game? You don't often hear the characters talk, but when they do talk, they just reuse the same voice clips from WarioWare Smooth Moves, the Wii game. They didn't even bother recording new lines outside of the pirate game. Game & Wario is a mixed bag. Half the games are decent, with 2 that I would even call good, but the game as a whole just isn't nearly substantial enough to justify a purchase unless you find it in a bargain bin somewhere. All of the games except for Patchwork take about 20 minutes to play to completion, if that, and only 2 or 3 of the games are fun enough to where you want to go back to them after you've beaten them once. You might stick with the game long enough to collect all of the orbs, but I can pretty much guarantee that once you get all the orbs, you'll never touch this game again. And I didn't try the multiplayer, but I very much doubt it adds enough value to the game to overcome the single-player shittiness. So I guess that leaves my score at